The oldest known one, based on the ones they've caught, lived 392 years, plus or minus 120 years. So it was born between 1504 and 1744. Imagine the things this thing has seen. Like, look at the immortal jellyfish. We're going to get into that in a little bit. This like immortal jellyfish, they're trying to figure out how to put that DNA in human beings, I think.
Like their neurons exist everywhere all over their body. So it's like this field, but the field extends out dimensionally in space and time in order they can tell the future.
Welcome to the Metaphysical podcast, where today we'll be diving into the telepathic, strange, and mysterious things that can really only happen in the ocean. Pistol shrimp have supersonic weapons hotter than the sun and deadlier than you think. The Greenland shark may be a supernatural cryptid that can live for hundreds of years. Are there deeper truths beyond the Inuit legends and stories of this slow-moving scavenger? Some creatures have bizarre ways of surviving impossibly cold conditions. And do immortal jellyfish and fortune-telling octopuses tell us more about the nature of life longevity and the human body?
Bizarre things happen in the ocean and all over the world, that's for sure. Hear all about them in this metaphysical episode that's out of this world. Are you listening to the Metaphysical podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or elsewhere? Leave us a 5-star rating and review. It really helps us reach more people. And remember, you've got to like, follow, and subscribe on YouTube, Rumble, Ganjing World, Twitter, and Facebook.
John, how you doing?
Hey, what's happening?
Yeah. So what? This has got to be like the 4th episode that we've done on animals. We decided to change it up a little bit today. We're going to be hitting seafaring animals, which is going to be probably just as mind-blowing as the land animals that we've encountered thus far.
Yeah, I like the sea animals have existed and evolved in a totally different environment. Um, so they have different types of abilities, which are absolutely fascinating. Because it's like we can relate to a certain degree to land-based animals and mammals because we understand that realm. But when you get into the ocean, things get a little bit different.
Yeah, they do. And there's so many varying different types of beings there that have strange exotic abilities that don't exist on land
Right.
at all. And we'll be getting into some of those today, you guys. We're going to be going through some very, very interesting creatures that you've probably never heard of with abilities that should not be on this planet. They're like, we're talking about immortality, like near death capability or death and beyond. Things happening under the ocean that should never happen, or things that we've been told are impossible to happen on planet Earth actually happening in forms of communication, potential telepathic abilities, just strange, mysterious things that only the ocean could really, I think, things that could only happen in the ocean. Yeah, if you're just kind of coming in on this episode, in our previous episodes, we covered very, very interesting land animals leading up to the elephants, which pretty much just blew our minds because elephants are just never seen anything like that. So, John, have you ever heard of something called a pistol shrimp?
Yeah, it's one of those things that you hear about, but it just leaves your memory. So I don't remember what they were about. So you're talking about a shrimp, a little
It's a
shrimp, a bottom
it's a
feeder?
it's a little shrimp. It's a little bottom feeder, but this particular bottom feeder has very, very special capabilities. Um, they have this one claw. So there's two claws, right? You know how a lobster, one of their claws is bigger than the other? So you can imagine that as a shrimp. Only this particular shrimp, this pistol shrimp, it cocks its claw open almost as if it's like snapping it into place, and then when it releases the claw, it basically creates a sonic boom. A sonic
Seriously?
Yeah, with a shock wave that gets as hot as the sun momentarily
Oh,
underwater.
yeah. Okay. All right. Yep.
It
I remember
is
this now. Yeah.
it's capable. So after its claw snaps, there is a bubble burst. It almost looks like an explosion has gone off in the water because the pistol shrimp gets shot back like, several inches, whatever. I don't know how big it is. And they shoot these bubbles at 62 miles per hour under the water. So this bubble
Jeez.
gets shot at 62 miles per hour, and the bubble burst stuns its prey. And then when the prey is stunned, it can drag the other shrimp that it's after into its little lair and do its thing.
It's interesting because well, like sound underwater moves, I think about 4 times faster than in air, and they use that. And there's probably other underwater creatures that use the water in order to stun their prey like this shrimp is doing, which is absolutely crazy because how in the heck does it create must create sort of a cavitation type effect or something with that bubble that is able to cause that kind of a heat. I mean, that's
I
really
can't.
incredible.
Yeah, and it's underwater with all of that resistance from the water. I mean, think about how hard that claw must be cocked and before they release and it snaps for them to get that effect. Like you
Right,
can't it's like the equivalent of a thunderclap on land, but I mean several times greater. Like
right.
the area around their claw gets as hot as the sun for a couple of for a brief moment. What is
Yeah,
that? Have you ever heard of a wood frog?
no, I haven't. Gotta say, I haven't.
All right. Well, it is called a wood frog, which would kind of, you know, it would suggest land, but you're going to have to hear about this strange amphibian, which, when I heard this, I was like, this is not possible. And of course, everything on the subject that we're covering or on the subject of animals that we're covering today is quite impossible. But the wood frog has developed a very bizarre way to hibernate during the winter by freezing to death and returning to life in the spring. Actual frozen, dead. Okay, so it can be found as far north as Alaska, and it survives winters by freezing for up to 7 months straight. Okay, now the frog's heart stops beating and its respiration completely ceases. So, by all accounts, this thing would be considered dead by modern science.
Right,
Totally dead. Now, these frozen frogs have been found to have blood glucose levels up to 10 times higher than normal, which somehow helps the cells retain water despite, freezing temperatures and all of that. When when the warm water comes back, basically they thaw out over a period of time and then within to 14 to 24 hours completely fully functional again. It's like a zombie
wow,
frog.
that's
Yeah.
incredible. That's incredible. I wonder if this type of research has gone into like cryogenic research. Most likely, it has.
I think all of these things in the ocean that do stuff like this,
Yeah,
they have been like look at the immortal jellyfish. We're going to get into that in a little bit. This like immortal jellyfish, they're trying to figure out how to put that DNA in human beings, I think,
right.
to, somehow help humans live forever, which is,
It's like
always on.
respawning,
Yeah. Yeah.
like video game respawning.
It is. Actually, it
Yeah,
is. It's exactly like that. So apparently, regarding the wood frog, there are other animals that can do this, and episodes later on, when we cover animals and stuff again, we'll probably be getting into some of these creatures. But the koi and the goldfish kind of can do something like this. Goldfish are really weird to begin with. Have you ever seen a goldfish that they let out into a river or something? You know how
No, like what
goldfish
do
are
they
like
do?
this big?
Yeah.
It'll get like this big. Like
Seriously.
there are goldfish out there that people have caught that are like the size of halibut.
It's weird. It's like goldfish remind me of guinea pigs, where you never could ever believe for a second that they exist in the wild. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? It's like, well, it's just a pet, right? It's just a pet that you keep. It never existed in the wild. It came out of someone's pocket originally.
right. Well, the goldfish principle is that it basically grows to fit the size of its container. So if you put it in a little aquarium, this little guy is going to stay small. It's going to stay the size that's like normal for that environment. You put that thing in some type of like lake or river or whatever it is, this thing is just going to keep getting bigger and bigger, and then eventually, you know, it'll just get massive. And
Like a killer goldfish. Like if you put a goldfish in your pool, I mean, how big can you get it? I mean, big
massive.
scary goldfish. Are, I
Yeah, it'll
mean,
keep getting bigger.
wow,
Yeah,
it'll
they
eventually eat you.
probably. I
Yeah,
mean, yeah, I literally have seen them being caught that are, like almost a human width, like arm size,
right, right.
wide. It's just crazy.
Do we know where goldfish are endemic, like in nature? Like, where are they endemic? In tropical? Is it a tropical
It's a good
region?
question.
I mean, I've never. It's like hamsters again. It's like, well, where do hamsters come from? Or guinea pigs? You know, I mean,
We're getting deep. We start asking philosophical
literally like
questions about
B, C
hamsters.
level pets. You know,
Okay, so goldfish mainly occupy fresh inland waters and wetlands in temperate regions. Excuse me. They tend to live in bodies of water with slow or no movement. This includes rivers, lakes, ponds, streams, marshes, bogs, and swamps.
I mean, can you imagine fishing? You're like fishing, and you're like, I caught a goldfish.
Well,
Woohoo!
and if they get as big as I just described, which they do, why don't we eat them?
I Nobody's going to eat a goldfish. You're not going to catch a
Because
goldfish, and then eat it. You're just
why?
not. It's like when you're a kid and you get chickens and you name all the chickens, you make friends with them. You don't end up eating them unless your parents make you, which yeah happens. That happened to me actually. We had actually had we actually had chickens and us kids, me, my brother and sister, named them, and one of them was named Friend. We named it. And it was a nice chicken. And there was another one that was blind named Minerva. But anyway, one day my parents said, "Okay, we're going to eat Friend," and so we ate Friend. It was horrible. Everybody was sad when we were eating. It was terrible. So I can't imagine eating my goldfish. No, not going to happen.
Yeah, but if you saw the size of the monster Jurassic-sized goldfish, you wouldn't recognize it as a normal goldfish. You'd just be
Yeah, but
like,
I'm not going to eat my Billy. Billy the goldfish is not going to get eaten. No way. No way.
I don't think it looks like Billy anymore. Look at this thing. Lindsay's gonna pull this up. You gotta see
All right.
this. It looks like look at the size of that. That's not a goldfish anymore, dude. It's a 67-pound goldfish that this fisherman caught.
That looks like a deranged goldfish. Look at his
It
eye.
it looks like a goldfish if he started, shopping at Walmart and was
Eating
and was
McDonald's. What are they
it's
feeding that goldfish?
yeah, what have I seen that goldfish?
Oh man.
Yeah, I mean, this kinda looks like red snapper.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? Well, you
Yeah,
can go to this Minnesota lake and go fishing for goldfish. How cool is that?
they're massive. Look at the size of that.
Jeez. I wonder if they're good to eat. Huh.
I mean, they must be. You fillet that thing, you'd never know, right?
Goldfish meat.
I think if you were hungry enough, you'd eat goldfish. So so like koi and goldfish do this thing where they can actually hibernate when the weather gets really cold for quite some time, like in the winter months. They just kind of stop movement and hibernate, And then when the water gets warm, they just go back to normal activity. So you're seeing this kind of in cold water in nature. But the wood frog takes it to that next level where
Right.
this thing is like dead.
Right.
It's completely dead for a while, which is insane if you think about it.
Right.
All right, so next, the Greenland shark. And if you weren't kind of turned off by any of the other beasts that we've covered in the water, you will definitely be turned off by this thing. This thing is the scariness that we discussed when we were talking about great white sharks. Multiply that by about 100. We're talking about like a bizarre monster cryptid shark called the Greenland shark, which lives longer than any other vertebrate species on the planet. Okay,
So
this thing
how
can
long does this live?
be, dude, between 250 and 500 years.
Ah, so the Anunnaki didn't like cut back their lifespan, I see.
The oldest known one, based on the ones they've caught, lived 392 years, plus or minus 120 years. So it was born between 1504 and 1744. Imagine the things this thing has seen.
Wow.
Man, dude, it almost lived through the Renaissance. It's just shy of the Renaissance. So the Greenland shark has the longest known lifespan, as I said. It can get between 7.9 and 23 feet. So between 2.4 and 7 meters for those of you living in countries that use the metric system. And its weight is between 880 and 3,090 pounds. That's 400. That's between 400 and 1,400 kilograms. So this thing is heavy. And the meat is considered a delicacy in Iceland. Okay. But it's super duper hard to make into an edible form because the Greenland shark is toxic unless you treat the meat for weeks. It even smells and tastes like urine because its flesh has a high uric acid content.
Jeez, yeah. That's a delicacy, huh?
Now check this
Ooh.
out. Even worse than that. Because it's so old and weird, it has glowing eyes because bioluminescent parasites attach themselves to the shark's eyes. So when you're
Yeah.
looking at this thing's its eyes got this like weird glow. It sounds like something you'd hear about in some weird Disney cartoon or something. Look at that.
Yeah. Yeah,
It just
that's
looks
intense.
like you can tell that this is like the oldest shark in the sea. Look at that thing.
Wow. Yeah, that's incredible. That's incredible. I've not ever remote viewed sharks, unfortunately. Why is that? We should check into that at some point. I used to scuba dive quite a bit and would run into sharks a lot. I mean, sharks. I would run into sharks more than I would run into dolphins when I was scuba diving. All different kinds of sharks. And most sharks are, they just move away from you as fast as they can. But I can't imagine that one would move away as fast as it can from you. That one
Yeah,
looks pretty intense.
it looks like a lurker.
Yeah, it does.
It would just
Yeah.
swim or hover and lurk and watch you.
Yeah.
Who knows? But yeah, what's your take on this thing? It lives older than anything else in the sea. Oh, any vertebrate animal.
You got to wonder if it's like a cousin of the megalodon. If it's related to, well, obviously it is related. All sharks are related to that, but closer, a closer cousin to the megalodon, first cousin or something. Maybe it's a rendition of it that happened just after they became what extinct, so they say. But I don't know. Like you said, I don't think that they are extinct. I think that what they've seen with satellite imagery is probably a megalodon, just like things like Nessie have been seen. What is it? What is Nessie? A brachiosaurus?
Uh,
Is that a
Plesiosaurus, yeah.
plesiosaur? Right. So this thing is ancient, archaic. It's got this like ancient vibration, but it's also like one of those things where you feel it and it feels so primitive. It just is basically going off of instinct where something's moving, it eats it. I mean, there have been other things that they've found in sharks' bellies in general, like non edible things. I mean, they just eat,
Yeah.
anything. They'll just eat. Yeah. I mean, it's like, when you're surfing, you're sitting there on your board and you're waiting for waves. What you're doing is you're looking for the waves, but you're also scanning the water constantly and very aware of where your feet are, because if you feel anything brushing up against it, you get out. And you're
Oh yeah,
always
for sure.
you're one eye is on the waves, the other eye is on like what's around you in the water. And that is always the danger of sharks, always. So I'm not into them. No.
No, they're freaky. Well, but what do you make of this? A great white shark, which is kind of the one of the largest sharks in the sea, li- lives from 40 to 70 years. This Greenland shark
That's
lives any
crazy.
anywhere from 250 to 500. Why are these two sharks so different? Think about that.
Yeah, that's really wild. I wonder why. That is strange. That's very different. I mean, that's a huge gap in age.
Huge
Huge
gap.
between the two.
And
And these sharks only live in Greenland, huh? I mean, is there a rendition of this shark anywhere else in the world?
I don't know.
No.
I have no. I mean, is it just living in? I've heard that Antarctica, the waters down there breed longer living, bigger things.
Right.
I guess you'd have to be to survive that. Okay, so speaking of weird things that these Greenland sharks have eaten, we got a list of the weirdest things sharks have eaten actually right here, which is pretty funny. Um, a bulldog on a leash.
Oh
It
man.
gets better. A full suit of armor.
What? What?
I don't have the background on that one. This one shark ate a porcupine. That had to have been painful.
Yeah.
I mean, after we talked about porcupines the other day, like if that thing shot in its stomach, those porcupine bristles must have worked their way out of the shark without
They
killing it.
must have. Yeah. Yeah.
A drum, a cannonball, a fur coat, a horse's head. What is this guy in the mafia? A tire, license plates, a video camera, an entire chicken coop, a
How did it get a
wallet.
chicken hoop? No, no. How did it get a chicken coop? Come on. This
It
is like
must have been a small one. How did it? Yeah, how did it? It must have like eaten it off of a boat or something.
someone had chickens on a boat, chicken coop on a boat.
That's an easy way to get to make food while you're on a ship.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
Yeah, so the chicken coop had chickens inside, so he ate the whole coop. He was like, "Oh, this thing's living. I'll eat the whole thing." Okay, so also found in a shark's stomach a wallet and a bag of money,
A bag of money. Oh
which
gosh.
sounds like mafia stuff again. Some of these sharks are mafiosos. So the immortal jellyfish. We're on to the immortal jellyfish here. I'm gonna go ahead and attempt this. Turritopus Turritopsis dorni, aka the immortal.
Teratopsis.
Yeah, Turritopsis, aka the immortal jellyfish. So it grown into adulthood in a matter of weeks. So once it's born, it grows into adulthood, no time at all. Now, keep this in mind. These things are tiny. It's 0.18 inches across. That's 4.5 millimeters across. It's smaller than a pinky nail.
Hmm.
Bright red stomach, edges lined with up to 90 white tentacles, transparent. An adult jellyfish is called a medusa. In response to physical damage or even starvation, they can take a leap back in their development process, transforming back into a polyp. In a process that looks remarkably like immortality, the born again polyp colony eventually buds and releases medusae that are genetically identical to the injured adult.
Hmm.
It reproduces itself genetically, multiple versions of itself.
Wow.
It
Wow.
shrinks
So
in on
multiple
it. Yeah,
versions. Huh.
yeah, yeah. It shrinks in on itself, reabsorbing its tentacles and losing the ability to swim. Then it settles on the seafloor as a blob like cyst. Over the next 24 to 36 hours, the blob develops into a new polyp, the jellyfish's previous life stage, and after maturing, the medusae bud off. The process has been likened to if a butterfly, instead of dying, could transform back into a caterpillar and then metamorphose into an adult butterfly once again. Very similar to
Wow.
the planarian worm in a way.
Yeah, it is. It is. It sounds a lot like that. That's. I wonder how many creatures out there do this, um, and how they develop that. That's fascinating. So that conceivably they could live forever
Yeah. And multiple versions of them
and
genetically
create
are,
clones. Yeah.
yeah, clones. It's like cloning. They're a little cloning plant.
Right.
Anytime anything happens that's traumatic, it just goes and clones itself multiple times to exist. So we discussed these planarian worms in a previous episode, so you got to go back and watch that. It's fascinating, that whole discussion. Now, the process behind the jellyfish's remarkable transformation is called transdifferentiation, and of course, this is extremely rare. So transdifferentiation reprograms the medusa's specialized cells to become specialized polyp cells, allowing the jellyfish to regrow themselves in an entirely different body plan to the free swimming jellyfish they had recently been. They can then mature again from there as normal, producing new genetically identical medusae. It's weird. This life cycle reversal can be repeated, and in perfect conditions, it may be that these jellyfish would never die of old age. Perhaps being eaten is the only way they die. Researchers documented essentially genetically identical immortal jellyfish distributed across the world's ocean, raising an intriguing question about the nature of mortality. If all of an organism's cells are replaced, is it the same individual? The genes are the same, of course, but is it the same? You know what's weird about this is during our own lifetimes, human beings' cells are constantly metabolizing, which means that even after like several months, it's not the same cells as the ones that we had. And yet we're still the same being. So I wonder, like, with this immortal jellyfish, if this thing is like multiplying over time, is it more like a network of jellyfish all thinking and acting together with the same brain? Do you know what I mean? You know, we hit a bunch of different sea creatures, but we didn't yet talk about one of the most bizarre sea creatures, the octopus. I think the octopus has to be, even with knowledge of the Greenland shark, the immortal jellyfish, all the things that we covered, I still think that the octopus has got to be the weirdest creature in the ocean. It's so bizarre. It's the stuff of nightmares. It's literally,
Nightmares. Well, yeah. I mean, they turn it into nightmares, right? Like
but it
Cthulhu.
is.
Right.
No, but I mean, sans Cthulhu and all of H.P. Lovecraft's work.
Cthulhu, 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 Cthulhu.
If you're just to come across an octopus, it looks like the stuff of nightmares. I mean, we're talking about the stuff that probably informed like H.R. Geiger's Alien in Aliens. I mean, it's the tentacles, the idea of these tentacles wrapping around you, the strangulation. Um, they're they can slip through almost any crack. I mean, they can flatten their bodies out so thin that they can get through a crack in your door. It's strange. It's, the only bone that they have in their body, I think, is their beak and part of their skull, but they can flatten everything else out. So as long as they can get that through it, they're gonna squeeze through.
Right. Completely. But here's where discernment comes in. When we I've been scuba diving and encountered these creatures. I've encountered them before underwater and stuff. I've remote viewed them, and when you remote view them and have that remote viewing discernment, you'll find that these beings are actually really cool, and their mind, their consciousness structure is not how people portray them on the weird, Cthulhu side.
Freaky Cthulhu side.
Right. It's not like that at all. They're
Hmm.
exceedingly intelligent, and intelligence that is like that is not limited to a brain structure, an intelligence that's energetic. So that's when we've remote viewed them. Their intelligence is like akashic record type intelligence, where they can reach out and grab information on and through an energetic field. And they can be a little bit trickstery. They can
Yeah.
be funny. They're funny as all heck. They have a personality to them.
Hmm.
And they are not a creature that is um, that we would think of as just a low level animal. They're
No.
not. They are an evolved being, is what they are.
They gotta be aliens or something, dude.
Well, that's
They're
what we find with all this stuff. Like when we remote view these animals, like we will sometimes trace them back to their origination point, and we find on Earth, right? And we find that a lot of them were put here, and a lot of them were like genetics that were added to things that were already here in order for them to evolve here to see. It's like there are a lot of beings out there, whether they're extra dimensional or in the multiverse or universe, that will make genetic their own genetic creations across the universe.
you know, I don't know if a lot of people know this, but you were talking about the intelligence of octopuses, and their whole bodies are like brains because they have neurons all over their bodies. So you it's a massive brain. Like the entire thing is a sack of neurons. And I mean that I don't even have a concept of what that would be like. So like when you're telling me your remote viewing data of this like strange intelligence, like that makes sense because like their entire bodies are built to be like massive brains. Have you ever seen these things in the ocean camouflage themselves into other things?
Oh yeah.
Oh,
I
I've
know.
like they can look like anything under there. They
Yeah.
change the color, they change the texture of their bodies, they become something else, and then all of a sudden they slowly change into something else and then grab their prey.
I mean, well, like let's just cut to the chase here. I mean, all underwater sea creatures are absolutely bizarre. Like from a remote viewing perspective, 100% bizarre. So one time we were tasked with remote viewing where this submarine went down, right? Where this submarine went down, what happened to it. And so I'm remote viewing and I've got a monitor, and I completely focus. Now I like when you're remote viewing like on operational stuff, you're blind. You don't know what it is you're remote viewing. You only go through the methodology that you know.
Well, and you've
So
just got a set of numbers that someone gave you, and you're remote
exactly.
viewing those numbers, and you don't know what it is, and then this data is coming in, and you document it
Yeah, you're
essentially.
just writing stuff down and you're doing your different movement exercises and stuff like that in order to get information. And so I'm describing this sort of, I think it's underwater. It wasn't the primary focus, but I'm describing this structure that's got that's got debris in it and stuff like that. There's these girders and junk like that, and I got really focused on this thing that was like putting rocks in its mouth and throwing up constantly. And I'm like, this being, this creature is like constantly throwing up. It's like always throwing up. And the vibration of it was so bizarre, and I got so stuck on what this creature was doing that I didn't focus on the submarine because it was had such a strange vibration, and it was just like putting things in its mouth and throwing up, putting things in its mouth and throwing up. And it's like obviously, like I get the feedback and I'm like, oh man, that was a fish. Like remote viewing a fish is one of the weirdest things in the world because they'll do that. They'll just pick up rocks and spit them out, pick up rocks and spit them out. An octopus, but see, when you get to the octopus, you've got this different layer, this different level of intelligence. We're talking about probably like a goldfish, right? It's like that's probably one of the, lower mind state type of sea creatures. When you get to the octopus, though, you've got this like thinking creature. You've got this creature that not only can think, utilize information in the 3-dimensional or 4 or 5-dimensional world that it's in within the water, you've got a creature that goes beyond that, that
Mm.
utilizes a larger brain structure, even connecting into other octopi out there in order to gain information on things.
Octopuses.
Is it octopuses?
I know. It's weird.
All right. I'm not going to go there. So, like, I remember doing that session, and then I went to Rubio's restaurant to get some food, and and they have a big fish tank in there with all these fish. And like, I just literally came off that session, and I ordered my food, and I just like stood in front of the fish tank for like 20 minutes waiting for my food, just staring at the fish, because once you connect into the vibration of beings in remote viewing, that lasts, and so you begin to understand them more, right? And so the fish, they, when you really connect and then you feel, you have a fish in front of you and you're feeling the fish as you felt them in the remote viewing session, it's like you really begin to understand what they are and their vibration, and that never leaves you, you know. And
Yeah.
that's one of the beauties of like being able to move into a different aspect of yourself with remote viewing or anything that's like that, to gain a more multi-dimensional sense of our world around us. But then you have like the whole Paul the Octopus story, right? Paul the
Yeah.
Octopus was the octopus that called the winners of the World Cup games leading up to the main World Cup event. And this was 2010, and this was a South Africa FIFA World Cup. So this octopus lived in Germany, and there were I think there were 7 games that the German team played, and it predicted all the outcomes of every game for the German team. And then he also picked Spain to win the final against the Netherlands, which was correct. So the way they did this was that they would put, let's in his tank, they would put in a box on one side a sea urchin with a flag for Germany, right? And then on the other side, they would put in a box another sea urchin with a flag for the team that they were playing for any given game. And with their intent, they probably wrote it on a piece of paper too, and like, you know, put post-it note on the tank. Okay, Paul picked the team, right? Their intent. So here you have Paul picking up the psychic vibrations of the people and what they want. And so Paul would go eat the urchin in the tank with one of the flags, whether it's the German team or the other team. And he predicted the winner of each team by doing that. So when we had remote viewed this, again, like we go back to this multidimensional um, mind structure of the octopus. It doesn't just exist in 3D or 3 or 4D reality. It exists in a reality that goes beyond space and time. We do too. We just don't realize that we do, right? And so that was the beauty of this thing that people were doing with Paul the Octopus, who is now deceased. God rest his soul. Um, I mean, he was amazing octopus. I love these guys. They're incredible. So that's the cool thing about them, is that, like, you know, you what you were saying is that their brain structure is on their skin, like their neurons exist everywhere all over their body. So it's like this field, but the field extends out dimensionally in space and time in order they can tell the future, right? It's just that how do you get them to know that you want them to tell you the future? You have to tap into what they are, right? So whoever was doing this had an understanding about octopuses in general and what they could potentially do, and decided to try it out, which is just very, very cool.
Yeah. I mean, it this example seems to communicate that they have some sort of multi-dimensional abilities, like you were saying, some type of psychic abilities. Who knows what communication for these things are even like? Can they speak telepathically? You know what I mean?
Right.
It we don't know. I mean, if they're obviously like it's not considered possible to do what Paul the Octopus did in society currently. Can humans do it? Probably. I mean, yes. You and I both know that they can. But Paul's out here doing it like it's second nature. And then, I mean, honestly, it's like after that, anybody who wants to win a bet for any type of gambling is going to go buy an octopus if they're smart.
Yeah, seriously.
I mean, that is like totally insane because we're talking about, I mean, with sports in general, it's like it's hard to know like who's going to win something like this. And I mean, there's a lot of conspiracy theories as to whether or not like sports are rigged in the first place, but Paul's nailing it every time, you know? I mean, there's other I think people for a while thought that octopuses were just these like normal animals. And then I think they started noticing, there was I think this one example I heard where, there's an octopus in a tank, and then there's a tank across from him in a room, and they start noticing that there's like critters missing from the tank across every morning when they get up, and they're like, well, what's going on here? So they put cameras in the room, and they saw that at night the octopus was getting out of the tank, crawling down into the other tank, eating what it wanted, and then going back into the tank, and then whistling like nothing happened.
Yeah, exactly. Like I say, they're little tricksters. I
Yeah,
mean, that's just like awesome. That's awesome.
crazy.
They're like cats. I don't know. They remind me of cats a little bit, sea cats or something. I don't know. Like the attitude of octopus would just remind me of that.
Well, we should probably end this episode here. I hope you guys enjoyed this. This was a sort of wild conversation on all the strange creatures of the sea. Actually, on Rise TV, if you're really into this, we have a whole series on um, creatures of the deep, and you should totally check that out because we cover all kinds of. We actually go over the Paul the Octopus story, and then we cover all kinds of creatures found in the sea throughout the ages, stuff we found on maps, all kinds of things. So if you're interested in that, definitely go over to Rise TV and check out that series. John, thanks so much for being with us, and for those of you watching, stay tuned for next time, because the next episode we're going to be covering dolphins, whales, the craziest. It's going to have to be a whole episode because it's just so much crazy stuff to talk about. So hold on to your hats, you guys, and thanks for being with us. And we hope you thought this episode was as out of this world as we did.